Gabe, over the last few years, we've seen this big transition into being very privacy focused. And I think a lot of this has been led by Apple. I don't know if you've noticed this as well, but one of the things I want to talk about today is how we as marketers can use data responsibly. So to kick this off, Gabe, I want to talk about the types of data that we can collect on our customers and on our prospects. And there's three main types. Are you familiar with the three types of data?
I mean, I feel like I should be since I do work in data marketing. But yes, I am familiar with the three types. We've got, and I know we're going to talk through each one of these in a little bit more detail, and then talk about our fun fourth new type, Zach, to extend the type of data that we can have access to. But first party data, second party data, and third party data. So yeah, I definitely think we should talk through each one of those. You want to jump into it?
Let's do it. First party data. This is information that you collect from your users, from your website, from your apps. And this can be pages they visit, items they've bought, time they've spent on your website. And Gabe, one of the tools that comes to mind when I think of first party data is the Meta Pixel, right? Like, obviously Facebook is collecting this information, but it's doing really all of those things we just talked about. What pages you're visiting, how much time you're spending, and if you have it set up correctly too, which items are people buying?
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think Google Analytics is another really good example of this. Type of data that you're grabbing from the websites that people are visiting, as you said. What are they actually doing when they get there? How are they navigating around your website? Dead clicks, quick backs, all of those things that can potentially be problematic. And historically, Zach, first-party data has been sort of the gold standard for data because it is information that is directly related to how your customers or prospects are engaging with the public-facing part of your company, right? Your website and app and things like that. But as we're going to talk about, there's kind of a newish kid on the block here in a minute.
Yeah, which leads us right into second-party data, and this is when you collect information from a company, so someone who's not your own business, and then they sell that back to you, or they sell this data that your customers are not aware of. So it's kind of being collected in the background, and then you go out and buy that. And then that kind of bridges into the last one here, which is third-party data. And this is, again, information that's collected from various sources, typically not with your customer's consent, but it's collected by a company who then, again, does not interact with your customer and then sells it back to you. And one of the big examples I have for third-party data is demographic information. I think that's a big one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. And think about how companies collect this information. So if you open up a bank account or when you buy insurance or whatever, right? Especially with the financial related stuff, they're asking you questions. What's your job? How much money do you make? Are you married? Are you single? What type of home do you live in? They're gathering all of this information and then aggregating it together into these massive data sources. And I don't want to paint the picture that any of these types of data sources are bad. I think they're very useful for different use cases, and maybe actually would be good for us to talk just kind of where, Zach, where you would want to leverage this type of data, these different types of data, first, second, third party data. But again, not necessarily bad, just aggregated in different ways. And I think that's really important for marketers to understand where this data is coming from, how it's being aggregated together, and then how to take action with that data as well.
And one thing we should point out too is as you go down this list, and I feel bad because we're going to bring in one right to the top of the list here, but as you go down this list, the accuracy of the data can become increasingly less accurate than the one we're going to talk about next. But that's one thing to keep in mind as well. It's all great data, but just keep in mind how is it being collected, and really how much control do you have over how it's being collected?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a great point. It's that control for the person who's collecting and using the data, that your level of control decreases as you move from first to second to third, so on and so forth. Because with third-party data, you're really reliant on companies, outside companies to do this for you. Now there's, again, really good companies that this is their entire job, is collecting and summarizing and aggregating this data together. But sometimes they do have to make inferences based on large data sets and things like that versus, first party data, really knowing, how your customers are interacting with your public, your public website, your public app, those sorts of things. That's giving you a whole different level of information than, something that you're getting from a third-party data source.
Which brings us to like the big one we want to talk about today. Back to the top of that list, zero-party data. And for those who are not familiar with zero-party data, this is data that a customer or a prospect or whomever this may be intentionally and often proactively shares with you and your business. And I mentioned the accuracy of the data. I like to think of this one as the most accurate, right? Your customer is, and we have some examples here, but your customer is going to be visiting a landing page on your website or however you're collecting this data. Maybe it's by phone even, and providing that information. So typically what we see is zero-party data is more accurate than, say, third-party data.
I would agree. I definitely think it's more accurate. I still think there's situations where people may not be completely honest about some of the information that they're sharing. I know I've done this. I don't know if you've done this, Zach. I feel like this is like a confession, but sometimes if it's a company that I don't have a previous relationship with, and they're asking me for information that I know is not really relevant to what it is that I'm actually going to buy, and they ask for like birth date or something like that, I will 100% lie about my birth date so that they don't have that information. Because if it's not a company that I trust, I may not necessarily share as much of that information. But I think more often than not, that information that you're sharing is because you're sharing that information, it's going to be much more accurate than some of the other things we discussed.
And it goes back, you mentioned trust, and I think this
Yes.
is also a transparency conversation. Consumers, if they trust the brand, they're going to be more likely to share that kind of data with you. And we've got some great examples we'll talk about in a few minutes. But if you think about it, Gabe, like think about which businesses you would and would not. If you have an established relationship, if it's a reputable name, if it's something you know about, you may be willing to share more information. So there's that component too. But
and I know we're going to talk about this in a minute, but there's also that give to get, where why am I sharing this information, and how is it going to be mutually beneficial in this relationship?
Oh, and we've got some great examples. I'm loving it already. But zero-party data, some high-level examples of this. It could be your email address. It could be a phone number, your birthday, things like that. But, you've probably seen this on a landing page now where, you can input in basically those fields, and the company will take you and add you to a list. But it also goes back to, I mentioned the transparency component too. And as we talk about how we use these, one of the things I mentioned to you, Gabe, over the weekend was, would you rather be targeted by a personalized ad or just some random thing on the internet? And I think with zero-party data, it's a great way to personalize that experience for your customers and for your prospects.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where that give to get comes in. Because if it is a company that I trust, if it's a company that I'm regularly doing business with, I want to have that personalized experience, and I want to be able to have a much more meaningful relationship with that company when I'm purchasing. I had this exact situation come up today, Zach. I was actually trying to book a reservation for a restaurant and for a conference that I'm going to be at in a couple of weeks, and they asked for my email address, they asked for my name, they asked for my phone number. And in that case, I did share all of that information accurately because I wanted to make sure that they could get in contact with me and complete the thing that I wanted to complete, which was, book this reservation. But again, there's that give to get. I was willing to share that information with them, and now they have that data so they can reach out to me and target me in the future. But I was willing to do that because I knew that I wanted to do business with this company, and I wanted to, have them be able to reach out to me so we could have that conversation.
It's a great example, Gabe, and I think that leads us right into our next segment, which is how are we seeing these zero-party data points collected, and how are people using them? So, Gabe, I think number one here is surveys about preferences and contact methods, and that's kind of what you just talked about a little bit.
Yep. Yeah, and taking it even a step further, obviously there's the contact methods and things like that, but I think when I think about contact methods, it's how do I want to be contacted? Is it where I want you to send me an email? Do I want you to send me a text message? Do I want you to send me a mobile notification? And that's a huge part of preferences, is how people actually want to converse with you. And so it's really important to ask your customers, well, how is it that you want me to communicate with you? And make sure that you're sticking to that as you're sending marketing to them in the future. Certainly could be a survey about, preferences. Zach, we've used this example before, but the streaming services, whether that be video streaming services like Netflix or Hulu, or music streaming services like Spotify, they'll ask you what it is that you like when you're going through and signing up for that service. That's basically a survey about your preferences. And then they build the solution that they're going to deliver to you around those preferences. I don't know if there's any other examples you can think about, around that one specifically, but I know we've talked about that one before, and I think it's a really good example.
A couple things there is when it goes to marketing channels, and I'll use the Walmart app as the company I'll throw under the bus this week, but it's really one where. So if you do like the grocery pickup, or I love the app, I use it. It's the best way to pay when you're in the store. But if you do the pickup, one of the things I dislike is you get a notification and then you get a text message, and then you get an email. So you've got 3 channels. But if they would ask me, which would you prefer? I would say push notification probably, right? It's a reputable brand. I would hope they wouldn't spam me. But it goes back to even the channels you use as a marketer. If you know your customers like receiving push notifications, or maybe they want an email instead of a text message, things like that. It's just going to improve that customer experience. Right? You're not going to frustrate anyone and throw your next sponsor under the bus like I just did by knowing exactly what they want.
That's such a great example, and I find the same thing with DoorDash, or with we do Whole Foods delivery to the house a lot. I get the text message that says it came. I get the notification from Amazon that says it came. I get the notification from my Arlo doorbell that says that it came. So it's like all of these notifications that are happening around the same activity. The other one, and this one drives me completely bonkers, is my kid's school. They send an insane amount of notifications, Zach. Like, you cannot possibly understand how many notifications if you choose to have kids at some point in the future, you are just going to be inundated by messages from their school. And it's, PTO this, and this event coming up that, and, all of these different things. What's happening at school today? State testing's tomorrow, blah, 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 blah. But they send, my wife and I joke about it all the time, because it's like, boom, you get the text message, and then boom, an email comes immediately after it. And okay, I understand these are important things and you need to communicate them out to parents, but if they would just ask me, would you prefer to get this in a text message or via email, I would gladly choose one, and then I wouldn't have to have both notifications coming to me. So it is frustrating as a consumer, even in that type of scenario where it's not a real product, so to speak. It's from my kid's school, but it's still super frustrating when you're getting just inundated with notifications.
I love that example. And like I've talked about push notifications and how it's such a personal, you're going right directly to someone's phone. Whereas email, I typically don't see my email notifications. So if I have any emails right now on my personal phone, I don't know. So it's again, coming down to preference and what that best experience is, customized for the individual. You're not going to have to broadly say everyone's going to get a push notification only, everyone's going to get an email. Letting the customers pick, and doing that through zero-party data is a great way to communicate with them. Mm-hmm. Another way to collect zero-party data, and this is one, I think of like the early days of Facebook. I have always seen this one, but quizzes and surveys and interactive content. And Gabe, we were talking, we've got some examples we'll talk through here in a bit, but I think we've all seen that landing page on a website where it's like, to get your results, put in your email or put in your contact information and things like that.
Yeah, I've got some specific examples on that one later based on a purchase that I recently made. But yes, I think we've all seen that. I think a lot of the direct-to-consumer companies have done a really good job with this because they needed to gather information around what people actually wanted and be thoughtful about what products and services they were selling. So they're really good at gathering information through these quizzes and interactive content to make it fun. They're kind of gamifying that scenario to make it fun to provide that information, and then you get it back, and sometimes they'll even benchmark it against other people and things like that, which I think is a really fun way to get the data, but make it seem like you're not just gathering information from your customers or prospects.
I love being benchmarked against other people. I have the email which shows like where you sit. It's almost like a box and whisker plot. I just love the competition. One of my favorites though, Gabe, zero party data, loyalty programs and account creation. So when you sign up for an account, it's been a while. Like I'm trying to think of like the last account I've signed up for. I think like I mentioned like the shaving company. Was it Harry's? I think it was. And like they ask, like they had a quiz on their website actually, but they ask information too. It's name, email. There was like how often do you shave and like things like that. So like again, like they're tailoring that experience to me. And then loyalty programs. That's one of my favorites, right? And the example I'll give real quick because it wouldn't be a podcast without talking about Crumble. But my birthday was 2 weeks ago, and sure enough, I get the notification from Crumble saying like, hey, free cookie. And the thing I love about that notification, and Gabe, I know you're going to agree with me. Nobody goes to Crumble for one cookie, right? Like if I'm going to Crumble, I will claim my free cookie, but I'm walking out of there with a $5. Like they're getting me to come into the store. They're getting me to buy, not just giving away that one cookie. So that's like one of my favorite examples as well. And me, I just love loyalty programs.
Yeah, that's a perfect example, and you are so spot on. They know you are not getting out of there with less than you're not walking in there getting your one birthday cookie and happily walking away. You're coming home with that giant fancy pink box for sure.
Oh my gosh, that's now I want Crumble, but. The last one.
I feel like this always comes back to Crumble on that.
Oh gosh, and the funny thing is like that wasn't even my Crumble example. So we're going to talk about Crumble in a few minutes, and actually my other favorite company, which combined with Crumble's my powerhouse. But last example here, Gabe, is customer feedback mechanisms, and this can be things like reviews and polls. And what have you seen with this, Gabe?
Well, there's two components there. So on the reviews side, I think that's a really interesting place to gather insight and information about how your customers are interacting with you, what they like about the service, the product or service that you're selling. And to bring this back to a conversation that we've had in a previous podcast episode, Zach, around AI, this is where you can leverage AI to potentially grab all of the reviews from like your Google My Business profile, copy and paste those into ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever, and ask some questions to determine what is it that people are talking about all of the time. What is it in particular that they like about the product or service that I'm selling? So that would be kind of the way that I would think about this from a reviews perspective and getting that customer feedback. Polls, it's pretty straightforward. Whether it's you're sending them through email to get information, whether you're sending out targeted social ads to reach out to your customers to get some interaction and understand what's going on there. There's a lot, or even just some sort of form on your website, right? If you're driving people back to a landing page, lots of different ways to gather this information. But even if you're getting just a small portion of your customers to provide you that feedback back, I'm repeating myself, you can oftentimes get a pretty good sample size of information to start to make some pretty decent inferences around your subscriber base, and then you're getting actual data for the customers who did respond. So to me, it's really a win-win.
I agree with you, Gabe. You mentioned AI. I feel like we should be playing bingo. We're headed for a blackout. We've hit AI. We've hit Crumble. We've hit push notifications. Yeah. Like we are going through everything in this episode. But I think one of the things we should talk about too is, we talked about, okay, you've got zero party data, you've got first party data, second party data. How do these really differ, and what are the different use cases? And at a high level, let's start with zero party data now and go sequentially here. But this is typically collected when you have a direct relationship with the customer. I talked about Crumble. Gabe had his examples as well. And the big thing here is it's collected with consent. So this is something that the customer is going to give you, right? You don't have to buy this data. You don't have to pull it from a website and do a custom audience. This is individual data that the customer is giving to you. And again, we talked about the accuracy, typically very accurate. In the Crumble case, I could have used any birthday, right? But I want my free cookie.
But you were still getting that free cookie on whatever day you gave them. So there is that.
Well, you never know. Maybe, hey, tomorrow I could have my birthday tomorrow and get another free cookie, right? New account. But
there you go.
No. But again, highly accurate. And the cool thing about zero data, as we talk about privacy, is, Gabe, if you had, your company, my BSP, you're probably not going to share that data. Like, you're going to collect that data and you're going to house it and keep it. You don't need to sell it. You don't need to give it to anyone else. That is your data. And I think of Apple again. I mentioned Apple at the beginning, but this is where I think that privacy focus comes into mind. Especially, Gabe, we obviously work a lot with broadband providers, but I think there is, a fair amount of concern of where data goes once it's on the internet. So I think being able to come out and say like, hey, this is your data. We don't sell it, we don't share it. I think that's a powerful conversation by itself.
100%. And I think it's an opportunity to differentiate yourself versus competitors who may not be as judicious about how they take care of customer data. So it's a great opportunity to have a key differentiator there. But this gets back to, Zach, I think to a conversation we had a few episodes ago around the different generations and how they feel about data privacy. And when the younger generations are definitely willing to share more, but they expect something in return for doing that. I think
the free cookie.
Yeah, exactly. They need that free cookie. But it's a understanding that companies are collecting this data, whereas folks in my generation and older, we didn't grow up in a world broadly with the internet where all of our information was just. There was a world one time, Zach, where people didn't want to put their credit card information online because they thought that people were going to steal it. Like, I remember that world. And now it seems insane that people would not be willing to do that, to buy things online for the convenience of them. But that is a world that, actually existed. So you've got to be thoughtful too about who it is that you're trying to sell to, who your target market is, and where they're at on that. Am I comfortable sharing this type of data scale?
The credit card example is funny, and my team would love this. I'm famous for going down side notes or side paths, but I remember when Apple Pay was launched on like the web, and like when you check out at select websites and apps, you can click buy with Apple Pay. You don't have to input any of your information in. It just automatically. I remember that being the coolest thing, but I also remember like even to this day, my parents just don't use Apple Pay. Right? They can't figure it out. They want to use the cash or the input their stuff manually. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like
it's the worst.
It's wild to me that like at one point that was something you didn't want to do, and here we're just clicking one button and off your money goes.
I love Apple Pay. I have converted many purchases now to Apple Pay. I mean, obviously, if you're shopping on mobile, it just makes life so much easier. But I was traveling a few weeks ago, and I went to go buy a coffee in the morning. I went and worked out, went to go grab a coffee, and I didn't have my wallet. And I was like, oh man, I don't want to run back up to the room. I just really want this coffee right now. And so I was like, hey, do you guys take Apple Pay? Yeah, no problem. I'm like, oh yes, this is amazing. So, just boom, scan my phone really quick and, done, right? But it feels super secure because it's scanning my face in order to actually do the payment. I don't know how much more secure that could possibly be.
I will honestly say, and to my Android listeners, we'll just call it NFC or Apple Pay, Google Pay, whatever you want to call it, Samsung Pay. It is probably the number one feature on my phone. When I buy groceries, I use my watch, my Apple Watch. Just tap and go. If I go to Walmart, they have the app. If I go to McDonald's, Starbucks, I use the app. Like I can't imagine going back to traditional payment methods, but think of the McDonald's app.
Sucks.
What's that?
Carrying cash sucks. Let's be real.
Well, I was just going to say, going back to the McDonald's app or even the Walmart app, when you sign up, there's your zero-party data. They're collecting information on you.
There you go.
On that sign up. I don't know if I get like a free fry from McDonald's.
Just one. Not even a whole packet of French fries. Just one French.
Well,
fry.
Like I said with Crumble, they know I'm going to go and buy something else. So there's that. So first-party data, and this is, as I mentioned, this is more of an indirect customer relationship you have. And again, collected with consent, individual data, but it's typically shared. So this is not something that you just have or you collect yourself. This is going to be something that's shared with trusted partners. And the example I used at the beginning of the podcast was the Metapixel, website activity, social media profiles. This is information that you're collecting from your website, and in turn, in this example, sharing with Facebook to build those custom audiences.
One of the things that I was thinking about as you were talking through that, Zach, on, we talked about Google Analytics earlier too, or Facebook, Metapixel. That information is outside of your control. That to me is the biggest distinction between zero-party data and first-party data. Is first, second, third party data, this can all be extremely useful for different parts of marketing campaigns and where your customers are at in the funnel. The zero party piece is really the only thing that you can control. Meta may choose tomorrow to completely deprecate the pixel. I don't think they will do that, but they could choose to do that. Google could decide that they don't want to do Google Analytics anymore and completely get rid of that solution, right? So there's a lack of control around some of this first party data stuff even that you don't have in comparison to the things that you're actually asking your customers about and they're freely sharing with you.
It's a great way to look at it. I mean, you think of the Meta Pixel, you can't really go on and download a list of your website visitors and action that data offline, right? It's all done through the Meta platform. They're collecting it. They're the ones helping you use that. I think that's a great example of, again, first party data.
Which is why they're not going to get rid of it, because it's ultimately going to push you to drive more ads on Meta. But regardless, they could if they chose to.
It's a vital tool, but again, they control that. You never know. Mm-hmm. But second party data. And this, again, another indirect relationship similar to that first party data. This is not something that we are directly working with our customers on. And the interesting part with second party data is it's not known if this has been collected with consent. So it depends on the data provider. Gabe, you mentioned that this is, a business. This is an industry where collecting data and being able to use that for marketers. And this is typically aggregated as well. So there's always the question on the accuracy here. It's shared with many companies. I mentioned some of the examples at the beginning, but again, this could be things like income, age, education, survey responses, things like that. But again, really focusing here, this is indirect customer relationship data. And again, not really known if it was collected with consent or how that was collected.
I think one of the other piece to mention on both second and third party data that becomes really important is how long ago was that information collected and what is the process to keep it refreshed and up to date. And there are some things that probably need to be refreshed and kept up to date more frequently, and there's things that change less often. Somebody's not going to go from 0 to 10 kids in a year, but they may move or they may get a raise or change jobs, things like that within a 12-month period. So keeping in mind that you really want to make sure that any data that you are getting, either second or third party, is kept up to date on a regular cadence, monthly, quarterly, whatever that may be, but make sure that it's still relatively up to date so that you're getting, relevant information and information that you can actually action off of.
I think that's a great call out, Gabe. And as we talk about these different types of data, we keep talking about some of these examples we have saved. So yes. I want to jump into those.
We've teased Gabe, it long enough.
You've we've got some great examples, and I wish we could quiz people live and see. Oh, do you think this is zero party, first party, second party? But
that'd be cool.
Gabe, you've got a great example here, and I'll kind of kick you off with I think it was a mattress buying decision you made recently.
Yeah, so my wife and I decided a few months ago that we really needed a new mattress, and we really didn't want to go to a store and lay on a couple of mattresses. It just seems awful. Just sounds like an awful experience. We did that, I don't know, however many years ago when we bought our original mattress. But my wife brought up a really good point. She goes, "I'm not going to know whether I like this mattress or not by going and laying on it for a minute in a store. That's not how I'm going to determine, whether I like this thing or not." So cool, sounds great. We're buying online. So then you start to narrow down, the different companies that you can buy from. And what I ended up doing was basically opening up 5 different web pages of all of these different companies, your Caspers, your Purples, your Helix, your, whatever. I'm probably forgetting a couple. But, the kind of popular online mattress brands that you can go to. And the first thing that all of them that you go through in those purchase decisions is, first of all, there's a pop-up that says, give us your email address and we'll give you a discount. So cool. All right. Got that. So I can get my discount for purchasing if I end up going back to this company. And then the second thing is, tell us about yourself. Are you a back sleeper? Are you a side sleeper? How tall are you? How much do you weigh? Do you sleep warm? Do you sleep cold? Do you thrash during the night? There's all of these questions that they start to ask you, and they're all very consistent across the different platforms. It's all pretty much the same question, but they're all gathering this information. And then ultimately one of them I ended up going and making a purchase through. And I have to say, it's very comfortable mattress. I'm very, very happy with my purchase.
Now we need a name drop. I told you I was mattress shopping last week. If we get a podcast sponsor, that'll set me up.
There we go. So I ended up purchasing a Helix mattress, which is quite nice. It's like a hybrid one, right? So it's not the foam, it's not the traditional, it's kind of the in between, right? Where you got some of the foam stuff and some of the traditional mattress stuff. Very, very nice mattress. Not cheap by any stretch. Mattresses are not cheap, but especially for a decent one. But sleeping like a champ, except for when my kids come in. Like last night, my daughter came in multiple times and woke us up. I don't know why, but as long as children are not waking you up in the middle of the night, you're gonna sleep well on the mattress. But again, they're asking me all these questions. They saw which mattress I purchased, and then they can personalize that experience. Certainly for me in the future, if there's other things that maybe they want to sell to me, maybe they'll, because I sleep warm, they want to send me a link to a cooling pillow that they want to sell me in the future or something like that, right? Just making stuff up. But point being is they have that data and information on me now, so they can personalize that experience for other things they want to sell me. And then also they can gather and aggregate that information for all of the people who came in, answered questions a certain way, and ended up making a specific purchase. So I think hopefully that's a good example of how to use zero-party data, again, data that I have given freely and with my consent to these companies, so that they can personalize the experience that they're providing to me.
It reminds me of, I can't believe I didn't think of this earlier, but have you ever been to a website where they've got like this spinning, I want to say I saw this on Bed Bath & Beyond last, but it's got like a spinning wheel, and like you click the button, it says like, oh, like 33% discount, you won, enter your email. It's the same concept. It's just and I just love how like great of a way that is to collect zero-party data. I don't know if like there's any like algorithm to, if it's a 30%, 20%, if they actually, do everything that's on that wheel. But the after you click it, it says enter your email to get your discount. So I think that's a great example, Gabe. Mm-hmm. One of the ones here that I've seen recently, we talked about Crumble. So I think I should introduce you to my second favorite, snack food, and it's Swig, and it's basically a soda snack shop. It's amazing. Like you can like mix different flavors, like you name it, you can do it. They can do like cream and like Dr. It's the best. I'm gonna visit just talking about it now. But Gabe, I sent you that landing page.
It's a good thing you like hiking, because between your Crumble and Swig, consumption, I feel like it's really good that you're out burning a lot of calories.
Oh my gosh, like it's very active. It's Crumble and Swig. That's not a good combo. No. But it's actually funny. The last time I went to Swig, I was hiking through Zion National Park in southern Utah. And afterwards, after a long day of hiking, I was like, man, I need to treat myself. And there was the Swig sign. I knew exactly where to go. But they have a landing page, and on that page, it's a loyalty program. And they collect your name, your email, and everything. You're not really making an account, but you're making this loyalty program. I'm going to call it an account after I just said it's not really an account. But you're signing up for the loyalty program. And now that Swig has my information, who knows what they will target me with, or how that communication will phase out. But again, it's just a landing page on their website talking about free food, or how to get with Crumble's case, that cookie on your birthday, whatever that may be. And I feel like that's a very common one. I'm definitely going to be on the lookout now to see what other websites are doing something related to your birthday, or again, just providing that simple email address for a loyalty program.
Mm-hmm. I think I'll go through this one quickly, but I think this is an interesting one. It's a company called Jolie, and it's again one of my favorite. I'm always talking about this DTC stuff just because I think it's so fascinating. But they're a shower head company, and the way that one of their best selling methods, and I've heard a number of people on different podcasts and different articles talking about this, but when you go to their website, you enter your zip code, and they send you a report about the quality of the water in your area. And I thought that was such an interesting way to gather information about who's purchasing and where they're purchasing from. But also it's that kind of classic give to get. So you've got to give them an email address in order for them to send you the report. So now you're in you're on their email list, but you get something out of it too. You actually get information. And in that case, the information reminds you that you probably need to purchase the product that you've looked at. But I thought that was so brilliant and just a great way to gather some information while also providing insight that person probably wouldn't have known before.
So, Gabe, I've got to tell you, as you mentioned this, I've never heard of this company. So I went to their website right now, and I have to say the amount of social proof on this website is insane. Not only does it just have social proof of people saying like, oh, this is a 5-star product, this is good. It has, and there's the zip code pop up. It just popped up.
There you go.
If I close that though, it has, ease of install, product quality, effects on hair, effects on skin, and like everyone can rate it. So they're showing all of this social proof. I love this website. I'm definitely going to have to dive in a little bit deeper, but that goes right back to conversations we've had previously on a lot of these direct-to-consumer sites and social proof and some of those best practices. But never heard of this brand, already very impressed.
Yeah, they do a nice job for sure. I actually feel like I'm probably going to buy one of those things at some point just because I'm so impressed with the brand.
Well, I was going to ask if you had, but
I don't have it, but it's on the list. It's not inexpensive, so I gotta justify that.
This is like,
and I just bought a very expensive mattress, so
this is like the most like adult conversation we've ever had. When we're talking about buying mattresses, I mentioned Bed Bath and Beyond. We're talking about shower heads now. Thank goodness we talked about Crumble and Swig. Otherwise,
otherwise this would be totally off the rails. All right.
But I think that leads right into what do you do once you get this data? Tailored promotions, deals. We've talked about that one over and over with the mattresses and even Crumble. I think the shower head. I think this is a great example too. I haven't put my zip code in yet, so I'm not sure what it looks like on the other end, but.
Well, put it in, and you're going to get you'll get an email shortly that links to the report for your area. So definitely do that, just because I'm curious what you think about it. The other one, and this is kind of a nice segue into this one, which is content that helps your customers, not just generic crap that you put out on your website to try and sell more stuff, but really thinking about what is it that your customer wants to know, and how do I provide them content that's helpful. A report that talks about the water quality in my area is, one, helpful, and two, reminds me that I might need to buy this thing, or I all of a sudden I have this need that maybe I didn't even know I had before because of the information that they provided. So I think that's a really good example of how to use this information to create content for your customers or prospects.
So many great examples, and the last one we have, Gabe, is developing new products and services.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think this is another area where, whether it's reviews, polls, or just basically listening to your customers to say, well, what is it that they want? I'm sure Swig probably does this for what combinations of things do they want to put
the
together.
Combo of the month, right? Or the Crumble mystery cookie, the cookie of the, it's, oh my gosh. And not to like totally deviate here, but Crumble did do this, and I don't know if they still do, but they would poll people, and you could do like base cookie, frosting, topping kind of thing, and that's how they did that. One great example, and this, I can't believe I just now thought of this one, Coke Zero. Those touchscreen machines where you can input your little combinations of what kind of, they collect data on that, and that helps them understand what people are drinking and potentially what flavors they can then create. And I think, was it Heinz made like a condiment version that had like ketchup, mayo, and all that kind of stuff? But
they did.
It was the same concept. It's not just this machine that's dispensing. Like I think of like a lot of people like, well, why don't you just do like the hand pumps at the fast food restaurants to get your ketchup? But now we're talking about, okay, we're getting real-time data on, call it zero-party data, on what our consumers are eating or how they're using our products.
I think there's a really important point there too, like going back to your Crumble example, just because we talk about that so much. But you pick the cook, you pick the base, you pick the frosting, you pick topping, whatever. Well, if yours gets chosen, if there's 4 options and you happen to be in the percentage of people that chose the one that won, boy, that makes you feel good, doesn't it? And you feel like you have some ownership of what actually happened there. And you probably, I guarantee you that somebody is much more likely to go in and purchase that thing that they chose and won versus somebody who didn't end up on the winning side of that.
Not only that,
drives
Gabe,
a lot of engagement.
Not only that, but if you're going to go and buy that cookie that won, I know I would be telling all of my friends about this.
Great point. Yes, there you go. Yeah,
you're brand advocate now.
I chose the cookie that won, right? And now all of a sudden you feel so good about yourself. So,
well, don't you remember like
so many it's this like lovely flywheel of stuff that just happens.
Even like back in high school, I think this is still a thing, but like Nike's shoe designer, you go on and customize your shoes, and people are like, oh, nice kicks, where'd you get those? It's like, oh, you designed them on the Nike website, and then where do people go? They go to the Nike website, and now they've got their custom designed shoes. So many great topics there, but that is all the time we had today. So Gabe, any last minute thoughts before we wrap up? I feel like we've had a great discussion here.
Well, I feel like I need to get the mattress sponsor just to be able to pay for said mattress that I purchased. But other than that, I think we're good for today.
That's a scary price. I was mattress shopping last week. I was on the Casper website, and like you mentioned, there was a quiz. How do you sleep, so on and so on. But oh man, and then there were so many options, and shopping online. Like I guess I didn't really know you could go lay down on mattresses. Like that's never been a thought on my mind when buying a mattress. But
sounds gross.
I mean, I've seen the shops in the mall, I guess, or whatever. That's a problem for a different day. So thank you, everyone, for joining us on today's episode. Be sure to give us a follow on your favorite podcast app. And if you like the video podcast, you can subscribe on YouTube as well. And Gabe, how about the blog? How's the blog coming on?
It's coming along really good. We've got all of our historic posts up now. So every episode of the podcast that we've done now has a blog associated with it. And as part of that blog, the video links directly to Spotify, so you can see Zach and I as well as listen to us directly from that. So we've got that all built out now. If you're interested in subscribing to that, then you'll get an email every week that basically has a link back to the blog, which has all the information, a summary of the podcast, as well as a video link to the podcast also. So definitely check that out. We've got it going on Beehive. We'll put a link in. I guess maybe we should do show notes, Zach. We need to do show notes. I feel like every time I hear somebody on a podcast talk about show notes,
we have to do it now. This podcast just keeps evolving, and I love it. So thank you again, everyone, for joining us. Be sure to give us a follow, like we mentioned, and we'll see you next week.